Welcome back. Now, we're about to have a conversation that many have avoided having with their loved ones, especially when they're reaching a certain age. Are you an adult living in a household with maybe parents over the age of 45, 50? This might be a segment you would want them to watch. We have with us Mr. Rotimi Obende. He's the head private trust from FBNQuest Trustees. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, so FBN Trustees has something special they've put together around the issue of having a will.
Yes, we do.
So what is a will? Let's break it down. What exactly does a will represent?
Okay, so you've asked that I should break it down, so that's what I'm going to try and do. So it's essentially a structure, an instruction you put in place to say that I own these assets, and I want to be able to give these assets to A, B, C, D. It doesn't kick in until you're no longer there. That's when the key will comes into effect. That's simply what a will is, an instruction you put in place, and you then have that instruction documented, executed, and then it comes into effect when you're no longer there. It helps you to be able to distribute your assets meaning anything that you own, what belongs to you, to the preferred beneficiaries.
All right.
Yeah.
So when we think of wills, we also think of it being a document. We also think of it being something secretive. We also think of it being something a lawyer should handle. But explain to us how FBN Trustees comes in.
Okay, so FBNQuest Trustees were licensed by the Security and Exchange Commission to offer estate planning services. And wills is just one of the instruments that we use in helping people to plan their estates. I would also say that in terms of how FBNQuest Trustees come in, this is also how we come in, trying to educate people. If you look at the statistics, it will shock you that the age bracket that you put out there when you started, less than 10% of within that age bracket, if we say 40 to about 60% of Nigerians actually have a will in place. So our purpose at FBNQuest Trustees is to try and educate people and push people to go ahead and take up that instrument. I know that a will is not something that a lot of people want to talk about, but we are saying at FBNQuest Trustees that it is time to start to have this conversation, and it's because of a lot of things that you find happening out there. So that's how we come in. We also help with the preparation of the wills itself, because based on the experience that we have, and we also help with lodgement of the wills also.
So I want to actually come from the... So I did mention earlier that it seems like something lawyers should be handling. I would like to believe that your team at FBNQuest have lawyers that are, of course, qualified to do this.
Correct.
But what is that department actually called, and what is it that they do? What is the process that they do? Okay,
so it's private trust department at FBNQuest Trustees that's responsible for estate planning. And what we essentially do is help people to structure. I like to use that word a lot because, again, when you sit in front of a real professional, that professional needs to first understand what you want. So if I ask you, for example, if you're looking at giving assets to your children or your loved ones, what traditionally would you want to use? It's most likely a will. However, there are other instruments which we're not going to talk about today. So let's restrict it to a will. So we help with the structuring.
So you basically write down everything the person owns or the person has access to. Does this include bank accounts, for instance?
Yes.
It includes bank accounts.
Yes.
Physical assets such as houses, land.
Correct.
But what about things like my shoes?
Yeah, so it's also part of the assets that you own. And when you come to us and we sit down, we itemize. First of all, we take an inventory. That's also something that a lot of people don't really put their minds to. It will shock you that a lot of Nigerians own property scattered everywhere in Nigeria, and they hardly are able to keep records. A will also helps you to be able to keep records.
Okay.
Let me talk to the younger generations who are more inclined into social media these days. A lot of them make money from social media accounts. I was speaking with a partner sometime during the week, and the partner made mention of another person that invested just about $5,000, roughly about 500,000 naira then, about 10 or 20 years ago, in a startup business. Today, he can't find the person that he invested that money with, and that's because along the line, there was no document relating to how that should take place. So a lot of us have social media accounts that we are making money from. A lot of us have this soft currency, cryptocurrency, and wallets, e-wallets that even our partners or family members are not aware of. There are passwords that even people are not aware of. So if you have a will in place, all of this can be detailed to ensure that nobody misses out from the assets.
So in other words, you're saying I can actually add my social media handles into my will and ensure that someone else gets to use them for the purposes they were meant to be used for, should life happen.
Correct. And yes, so your social media account, particularly if it's making money for you, again, you also want a situation where even if it's not making money, you want that account closed. So some of us get notifications of people that have passed their birthday, and you are wondering, should I wish this person happy birthday? But the guy is passed. There's nobody that has taken over that account. But so if we just, again, restrict it to wills and accounts that are making money, somebody needs to be able to continue that process. There are family members that are currently benefiting, and you want them to continue to benefit from that structure. So having a will to accommodate that is very important.
So now, let's talk about the ideal age to start considering putting together a will. Is it out of place for a 25-year-old to have one?
It's not even out of place for an 18-year-old to have one.
Wow.
Yes. So that's because at 18, we assume that you're a majority. Now, I use the word 18 loosely because a lot of people out there would say, what does an 80-year-old person own? Some of us have come into inheritance at very early age. So you now need to start to think what you want to do with that. Apart from that, I made mention of children these days that are making a lot of money, making lots of money from the accounts that they have. Some of them are actors or actresses. Some of them are influencers. They are making serious money. So it is time for them. However, because, again, generally you look at people that have started working. But what I would like to emphasize is it is important once you start to own assets, and you talked about, for example, your shoes, your clothes.
Yes.
Some of us carry phones that are worth millions. I was speaking with somebody the other time, and we had a client that the family members were fighting over a 32 inches black and white television.
Wow.
Black and white television. Who should own it after the man had passed on? So whatever assets that you own, it's important to start to think about it. You might, yes.
Sorry, let me come in and ask what the difference is between just having a piece of paper. You've listed all the assets you want to distribute, whether it's accurate or not, and you sign it and keep it in an office drawer somewhere. Is that, is it a legal document once it's signed, or must it have gone through some processes?
A will has its process that it must necessarily follow. There are guidelines, even the way it is structured. So outside Nigeria, you can do that. You can just write on a piece of paper, provided it meets certain conditions. But in Nigeria, the law must be followed. Now, in even writing your will, it's important that when you want to execute it, there are two people that will be present. They are known as witnesses. So there's a pattern that it has to be followed. There's a structure that also needs to be followed. Let me quickly say that what you also don't want to do is make mistakes in terms of how you have even written it. That's why it's important to speak to a professional and let a professional help you handle it. Let me quickly use this example. There's this popular American former CNN reporter. Larry King that passed on. He did the will himself, but we saw later on that there were a lot of gaps in the will. For example, he listed 5 of his children as beneficiaries. One of them had passed away. There was no mention as to how or who should then take over his own portion. He didn't name an executor in his will. An executor is somebody that is supposed to help with the process of probate and then the distribution of the assets as you have outlined. He didn't make mention of his wife, which he had separated from at that time. So in order for these mistakes not to occur, because then the wife is in court and saying, I should be a beneficiary. And legally, rightly so, she should be a beneficiary, yes.
I want to touch on bank accounts.
Okay.
A lot of Nigerians have multiple bank accounts, ATM cards. They've thrown money in different places in the mindset that it is safe.
Correct.
But I heard recently that anything left in a bank account, should life happen, just automatically goes to the bank, even if the person has a next of kin in the forms that they signed at the bank.
So 2 things you've spoken about. One is the next of kin, and we can talk about the next of kin in a full episode on its own. Let me quickly say that the next of kin is not a beneficiary. So even if you have a next of kin in your bank account, that person is not supposed to automatically start to inherit the cash you have in the bank. A next of kin is simply a contact person. So if anything happens to me, for who should my organization contact? Who should contact the bank to say this person is no longer there, can no longer operate the account? That's what a next of kin is. However, if it's just liquid asset, which is your bank, your investments in cash that you have, take up a simple will. And at FBNQuest Trustees, we can give you a simple will that is very cost-friendly.
I have to say a big thank you to you, Mr. Obende, for talking to us. Now, FBNQuest Trustees have put together some interesting packages, and we hope that you'll check them out online to find out more about how you can begin putting together your will right now. Let's take a quick break and be back with more.